Hi, my name is Grace. I am a fellow with the Stevenson Center and I will be interviewing you today. So I was just wondering if to start, you could give me like a brief bio about yourself, your name, where you're from, what your undergrad's in, and your current field of study.
Okay, so I'm Ryan, and um, currently I'm a sociology major with the Stevenson Center. My undergraduate is in criminal justice, and what was the other question?
The other question was, nope, I think that was all of the questions. So next, so let's talk about your professional practice a little bit. Where do you work, the organization and the location, and what do they do?
Great. So right now I'm working with the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority. So the Illinois Criminal the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority is a state agency that does a lot of different things. I would say, in large part, distribute funds. They're a grant distributor, hold a lot of resources, and so a large part of their work is associated with that. However, I am in the research and analysis unit. So for the Center for Justice Research, and within that center, within research and analysis, I'm in the Center for Criminal Justice Research and Evaluation. There's also a data analytics and also an emerging deflection, and victimology, victim services unit. These are inside of the research unit as well. But I work for the Center for Justice Research and Evaluation. So essentially, what I do, or what our center does, is a number of different research related things, and as it revolves around criminal justice in the state. So, for example, um, we do evaluations, which is kind of in the name, but we also do reporting. Sometimes there's a legislative mandate that says, you know, let's say we need to know how many criminal records checks are being conducted on federally assisted housing applicants. And that number is to be compiled and reported every year, disaggregated by gender and race. That's a project I'm working on. The legislature passed that law and said that ICGIA is responsible for collecting it, and so it would fall on someone from our center. Another example of a project that kind of work on, or something I might be doing my typical day, would be interviewing people. We were working on one project that is a court diversion program for high level drug offenders. So, generally, someone who is selling high levels of drugs, which generally are economically motivated. So, this diversion program is like a year program where instead of going to jail or prison, you can participate in this. You go to services, you have to get a job. They go through all of these things with you. It's a much more less an approach that's trying to not result in incarceration or things. And if you get an expungement and things like this. And the question is, does it work, or what does it do? Right, because public dollars are important. So someone from our center would construct that research study, from the director to the managers. We would work together, right, to decide what are the research questions, what do we want to know, what do we think we can know, right, and what are the methods to get there. So um, another quick study that I'm working on is we're doing an evaluation of a work release program in Illinois, and essentially the question is, does maybe instead of, so your last 2 years in prison, you can go and work in this kind of work release where you leave during the day and you have more autonomy. Eventually, you're able to go stay at home with your family, but you're still kind of connected to the system in the sense that you have to report there. That's where you sleep, um, uh, and things like that. It's still very monitored, but that basically you're readjusting to your freedom. You're also working full time. You're saving money. You're building those connections back with your family and your community. But it's very much tied to employment, because we know that people with criminal records or people that particularly have served time in prison may have employment deficits, right, for a number of reasons. And so the question is, does this reduce recidivism? Is this a better, maybe, alternative than traditional sentencing? And so my job is working more with data. So I would say that, and I guess I should say quantitative data, because the SEED program, as I mentioned earlier, is more qualitative. So I would be doing interviews with people, and coding and thematizing, right, the interviews, comparing those with the results of another colleague who's also coded and thematized. And then, we would do that qualitative research process. For the ATC study, I'm working more with SPSS. I'm doing a propensity score matching technique, which is the evaluation estimation of the control group compared to, right, because we don't have a true and honest control group, because you have people who are in ATC and people who aren't, but we need to simulate that, let's say, blind control group. And that's where an evaluation method like propensity score matching might come into play, right? And so the typical day includes going to meetings, working on a little bit of data, maybe you have an interview, or you have to schedule something with this criminal records check because you don't know anything about public housing and you need to learn from these people how they conduct criminal records checks, right? So it's a variety of tasks that you'll find yourself doing, all of which are build upon the foundational knowledge about research in general, right? So having those concepts, and having that kind of applied knowledge from the program is really important, particularly, coming from sociology, right? And I saw myself doing this kind of work, and so essentially that so essentially applying those types of just understanding methodology and understanding what it is to have a participant interviewee interaction, right? The ramifications of trying to, not sampling properly, the problems with skewing your results, those really come into play. Making sure you understand things and think things through, designing a survey, these things in our research methods classes particularly really come into play because you are in charge of contributing to studies, and also conducting them and designing them. And
So
also, sorry.
would you say your research methodologies class in sociology prepared you for this position?
For sure, yes. And I think that those conversations that we had, even at a theoretical level, come into play, right? Because when it comes to the how can I say this, the discussion, right, when we want to maybe broaden our horizon and our results, um, theories in criminology or theories in sociology, life course theories, these discussions will start to come into play. The lens through which you're viewing um, you know your results are like really important. And I think that, like I said, from a skill level of, yes, learning SPSS and having discussions about what it is to do qualitative coding, for example, those are important. But I would also say that those bigger conversations, like I was saying, about how we obstruct that process by just being who we are, that insider outsider conversation, that conversation about you know your, how to connect these findings to bigger things, right? I do think that that's something that we talk about in methods that go beyond just like those hard skills, I guess. So yeah, I would say all around definitely prepared. You're muted. Oh, sorry.
I'm muted.
I just couldn't hear
Okay. Can you hear me now?
you. Yes.
Great. I think you talked a lot about how your academic experience prepared you for this position and how you're able to connect some of your theoretical knowledge and practical methodological knowledge from sociology to your current position. Do you intend to stay with ICJIA after your practice? Would you say you see a career with them?
Yeah, I think, for probably many people in the program, they might be new to Illinois or they might be new to the Midwest. And so, that's a conversation that I think I'm also having with myself. But in terms of the placement leading to a career trajectory, uh, that that was something that was important to me in the placement process. And I could very much see myself continuing on as a research scientist with the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority. It's a I think it would be a lucrative position. It's the day to day is exactly what I was looking like. I mean, if you're someone who's interested in research and is someone who finds maybe even simple statistics interesting, and you find these topics interesting, and you like to ask questions, and you like to listen to people's responses, then this could be for you, especially if you are interested or knowledgeable about the criminal justice system, right? I think sociology has a lot of caveats, and one of them is definitely, what we do and how we talk about crime and how crime impacts our society, and so there are a lot of transferable skills, and yeah, I it's something I'd really like to do for sure.
What advice do you have for any other fellows in the Stevenson Center program who might be entering their professional practice?
Yeah,
Um,
my uh, my advice would be to, you know, let me think about that for a second. Can you pause the video?
so let me actually rephrase that question. What advice do you have for new professionals in your field?
So, for new professionals in general, it's important that we are understanding with ourselves. I think, just don't put too much pressure on yourself. From a personal perspective, sometimes I can feel like, oh, what if I'm not prepared? Or what if I'm not, you know, gonna, what if I don't know everything? And you don't have to be the expert of everything. You will learn. And what you've done in your life has already prepared you, right, for these types of experiences. You're going to be applying new skills, and people are going to be asking new things of you. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and just don't put too much pressure on yourself to feel like you have to know all the answers, because there's no way anyone can.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much for your time. And I appreciate getting to learn a little bit more about your position and all of the cool things you're working on.
Thanks.